everybody, and welcome to today's BAInsights session. Today I've got two really good guests to talk about using CoPilot as a business analyst. So quite a hot topic and an interesting one, I'm sure. Before we get into the detail, let's hear some introductions, and we'll start Iryna first of all.
Hi everyone, my name is Iryna. I have 18 years of experience in software development for healthcare. So we are producing products for dentistry, basically software products, and releasing all over 100 countries all over the world. And I benefit a lot from AI tools recently and would be very happy to share my experience with you. I have mechanical engineering background. I'm certified product owner, project manager, had all these roles during my career, and now I'm seeking for CBAP certification and really following all the trends on the market and try to benefit in our company. I'm a department lead of business analysts and educate a lot our teams. And we all learn every day and try to use all modern trends of the market. A little bit about my private life. I'm a pilot, and in my free time, I fly small Cessna. And yeah, if needed, I can land a plane. Yeah,
Brilliant.
headed back to you, John.
I think, Iryna, you might be not only the first person we had on here from the dental industry or profession, but possibly the first person as well as a pilot. That might be proven wrong, but it feels the case. So thank you, and more importantly, really qualified for this conversation today. So thank you for joining. Ankur, over to you, please.
Yeah, I also basically I am a college professor, and I am a freelance business analyst. So talking about my experience, it is a cumulative of around 3 years, and I am into business analytics also. So I have completed my MBA in business analytics only, and I am training students into making up AI agents, building up using Copilot and the related stuff. So talking about my experience, I am into consulting roles also. I have worked on business as a business analyst, as a software project manager. And yes, I have a dynamic experience of different organizations. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion on this topic.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right. Well, let's dive straight in. Perhaps we'll start with Iryna first, in terms of just asking how you're currently using CoPilot in your business analysis related work. And obviously, you're doing more in business analysis, so feel free to be broader if you wish, Iryna.
Yeah. So basically, talking about my
sorry.
Copilot.
That was just to Iryna first. You don't want?
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. It's a great question. Right now, I'm using Copilot primarily as a productivity and insight companion across my day-to-day business analysis activities. For example, during workshops or stakeholder interviews, I use Copilot within Teams and Outlook to summarize discussions, extract decisions, and highlight open questions. It helps me quickly capture the essence of a conversation and turn it into structured notes I can validate afterwards. In documentation and requirement drafting, Copilot assists me in creating the first version of user stories, design descriptions, or acceptance criteria. And it's particularly helpful when I provide a prompt like, for example, create a system requirement for automated data encryption aligned with our industry standard 62304. It's product lifecycle for medical devices. And Copilot can really generate a solid draft, which is then refined to regulatory clarity and traceability. And I also use it in Confluence and Word to rewrite and harmonize text across multiple projects, ensuring consistency in terminology and tone, which is very critical when working under FDA, design control, and MDR requirements. So as I mentioned, we work in highly regulated requirements, and we pass FDA and MDR clearances to market our products. And finally, Copilot is a great brainstorming partner. For example, suggesting potential risk mitigation, summarizing lengthy regulatory documents, or generated alternative phrasing for stakeholder communications. So I see it as a collaborative assistance, not replacing analytical reasoning, but accelerating the mechanical parts of the BA work. And it gives me more time to what it truly matters, like stakeholder alignment, critical analysis, and decision facilitation. Handing back to you, John.
Excellent. Yeah, no, you've covered quite a few things there. I mean, I mean, definitely is familiar and similar story to myself in terms of like using it to summarize and to draft, to have suggestions around text as well. But what's interesting by what you said there is that you're using it as well to make sure there's that consistency and the language is clear enough so that your regulations, the right example, can be clearly adhered to, which is something that I know some BAs will resonate with. So excellent start. Thank you. Ankur, what would be your view?
Yeah, so basically, as a freelance business analyst, I'm someone who likes to work on different clients on 2 different projects. So basically, talking about Copilot, it is something who assists me to building up pitch decks and building up SOPs and SOWs in the initial drafts, wherein I can also pitch in a different way to the clients, and as using about this, talking about the user stories along with the acceptance criteria, as just our teammate just said. So basically, the things are related to building up AI agents also. So Copilot is something which helps me to integrate different Microsoft apps and providing me with the things that are related to the requirements of the stakeholders. So yeah, that is something which is of my use as of now.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly building of decks and content. I think you mentioned like statements or terms. I mean, we would use it as well for if we're putting together problem statements. Really, any form of long form text is really good at sort of deciphering, interpreting, sharing a view for how your language or your tone can be improved, or even just given a different perspective as well. So it's interesting what points you both mentioned there in that respect. I think what I'd add on top of that as well is that we currently use it just to make suggestions about things that perhaps we wouldn't have considered, whether that's items we hadn't considered perhaps with our knowledge of Microsoft tools. So an example of that might be formulas within Excel. It might be better use of terminology when we put in text together. So, for example, within Word or we would put PowerPoints together. But it's also quite good for just suggestions in respect to some of the content that we're putting together as well. So it means that we don't have to maybe go and get that sort of like that baseline understanding of a topic from speaking to loads of stakeholders. We probably get a view. So as an example, I mean, Iryna, you mentioned using the dental industry. And I'm pretty confident I don't know too much about that, apart from being maybe a customer in a small regard at different times. So if I were going to talk to dentists about their requirements, I would probably want to understand a little bit first of some of the possible challenges that a dentist might have. And I think if I was documenting my initial draft and my initial questions, having an additional perspective from a tool like Copilot would be really interesting and useful, so that I'm probably putting a bit more sensible questions forward. Doesn't replace that interaction with people, but it's just a helpful tool, I think, as you were both saying. So yeah, so no, a good start. And so we mentioned some of the tasks that you're doing as well. Are there any other tasks specifically beyond those you've mentioned and that Iryna's mentioned, Ankur, that you've either used Copilot for or that you feel it might be really well suited to doing?
So right now, Copilot, in my opinion, is best suited for tasks that are text-heavy, repetitive, and more pattern-based, where structure and clarity matter more than deep domain judgment. Like, for example, it's an excellent at driving and refining requirement documentation, things like user stories, acceptance criteria, design descriptions. And if I provide some context about a feature or workflow, Copilot can quickly create a structured draft following the same structure as I want to, so that format, and suggest like Gherkin style acceptance criteria. That saves me time and keeps the documentation consistent across our Jira and Confluence. These are tools we are using in a corporation. And it also performs really well in summarizing and synthesis tasks, summarizing team meetings, creating follow-up action lists, and like distinguishing long regulatory text into some key points. And I often use it after review sessions or audits to produce some structured meeting notes and suggest the next steps. Another area it shines is content rephrasing and harmonizations. For example, we often maintain multiple documentation streams: clinical, cybersecurity, software requirements. And Copilot helps make the language uniform, more readable, and aligned with other templates, with our templates. And in a heavy regulated industry, templates is a core what we stick to. And essentially, it's great for speed and consistency, not for decision making or reasoning. Copilot handles the documentation load, so analysts can focus on conversation with stakeholders, validation, and compliance logics. So the area where human judgment, is irreplaceable. So that's my point of view on that.
Excellent. Ankur? Ankur, what would be your view?
Yeah, so basically, talking about my opinion right now, so Copilot is something which helps me to assist in building up notes. So basically, if I am into a client call, so I am someone who needs full focus on client requirements, understanding what he is expecting from me, not only writing down the documents or creating the notes for that time. If I will be focused on different things, so basically I would be somewhere losing on control over my client as well. So basically, as per my understanding, Copilot is something which helps me to assist me, not only lead or take the recommendations at that point of time, but yes, assist me to build up notes, summarize or refine the things from me for that point of time, and then I can focus on different requirements in the new future. And then also I can build up something better to pitch to my client in the next call or something. So that's something which helps me to build up good connections with the client as well.
And how have you found the accuracy of, I mean, like Ankur, I'll ask you this, yeah. How have you found the accuracy of what you get from Copilot?
Yeah, so basically talking about the accuracy is something which we cannot define at that point of time. But yes, I am someone who gets just a sort of idea. And at the end of the time, and at the end of the day, also we are the only one who are going to pitch, who are going to earn, and who are going to focus on the things. So yes, as a business analyst, he is one who needs to have that business acumen and intelligence also, who also should possess those understanding of the things which are coming from the AI.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, and what you obviously both mentioned there is the fact that I'm taking a couple of examples, but you use it to summarize documentation, perhaps provide an opinion based on a large amount of text. We did the same. I'll definitely use it for the same purpose at times, but it's as much as anything I tend to use it to ensure that I perhaps haven't missed anything myself. So like if I'm in a meeting, I will leave that meeting with a perception of what I think the customer has said or the stakeholders have said. So having a more detailed explanation of what a different perspective is, so Copilot in this case, having Copilot's view of what the key points is a good way for me to validate that I either have everything that I think is important or to show me stuff that I hadn't noted down, so I can then make a decision of whether it is important enough to include it, whether it's in my notes or my final output. And it's similar actually when it comes to, not just note taking, but producing, documentation, PowerPoints as an example, and even using it from an Excel perspective. It's just a useful advisor most of the time on things that I might have forgotten or missed, or that I might ordinarily rely on somebody else in the team doing an initial review for me. Now, it doesn't mean that I won't review it with anybody. It just means that very first early stage check, I've got a little bit of support on, so I can make it a bit better before I get it in front of someone else. So excellent. Yes, I really, really appreciate you sharing that view. Ankur, we're going to start with you first on this question. Give you a chance to go first. So you've mentioned that you found it useful for some of the tasks that you have. I think you mentioned things like user stories, and I think acceptance criteria has been mentioned, these backlog items. How have you found it in terms of capturing all aspects of what you need in respect to the user stories and requirements and acceptance criteria? Iryna, I will let Ankur go first.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so basically talking about the acceptance criteria and the expectations. So basically at the initial when at the initial call. So basically the client is someone who provides us with the requirements, and we are the ones who focus on the requirements and design the expectations of the client in the process of requirement gathering. Then we are the ones who can provide that prompts to the co-pilot. We can make him understand the complexity of the client, the requirements, and then we can provide some sort of the things that are required by the co-pilot or the AI tools. Then we can create an initial draft with that a plan like a SOP or SOW. Then we can also focus on the flow charts, likewise using the mermaid and other stuff wherein the AI agents are well more capable of building up flow charts for us. And then we can focus on the acceptance criteria where the criteria are being more towards yes or no or the related stuff.
Okay, and Iryna, be your view.
I would like to add to all Ankur said that during workshop or stakeholder interview, and we often let Copilot summarize meeting transcript from Teams or Outlook, and it saves me a lot of time. It captures action items, decision, and letting me focus on facilitation, horizons, and typing notes. And for user stories and acceptance criteria, it serves as intelligent drafting partner. And let me give you one example from our industry. If I describe a high-level need, for example, allow clinician to view intraoral scans in real time, it can instantly generate story templates. As a user, I want to solve that structure, suggest acceptance criteria, and propose edge cases I could have missed. And when it comes to backlog management, Copilot is particularly useful for consistency, and it helps to reward stories to align with invest principles, detect duplicates, and it very good maintains uniform tone and style across Jira items. We have a cross international team, and English is not our first language, so it helps a lot to keep our language and tone very professional. And anyway, it does not replace analytical judgment. I still need to validate context, especially, and regulatory impact and some dependencies. But it significantly speeds up all our documentation and standardization process.
Excellent. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not a replacement for what we do. It's not like we can take a version of Copilot, put it in the room, listen to the stakeholders, and it will come up with the perfect set of requirements, the perfect acceptance criteria, etc. It won't do that because it won't naturally ask the right questions, and it won't be able to read the room. It won't be able to understand emotions. It won't be able to tell, that there are individuals in the room that maybe haven't spoken, need to speak. But it is good where different voices who might communicate information in a different way. We need to try and make that a little bit clearer for ourselves to understand what it is, who said what. So it's really useful on that sense, I would say. It's good as well, as you said, when it comes to suggesting like stories or the detail of your requirements or the acceptance criteria based on what you've already provided, it can be quite useful for that because, I think a typical example of what business analysts tend to do in a very simple sense is that we will document a requirement, having heard of it from the stakeholder. We capture it as we believe we've understood it. We'll look at that requirement as we've noted it down. And we'll consider, is it clear enough so that it's going to be interpreted in exactly the right way that we need it to from those people, such as development, who are going to work on it. That is generally just our experience, our perspective allows us to often apply that judgment of whether a requirement is of satisfactory quality. We can, of course, review it with the stakeholder, but that's maybe a different matter. But having Copilot there as an assistant means that it can interrogate on our behalf whether we've used ambiguous terms terms that might be misunderstood, or that there can be multiple meanings. And we can almost ask CoPilot, if we could almost give it a draft requirement, refine it with CoPilot's help, play that requirement back to CoPilot and ask it for an interpretation of its own requirement. And that can give us some really good insight as to whether that requirement is likely to be understood by our stakeholders as they receive it. So you mentioned some interesting points there. In fairness, are there areas where you feel like CoPilot falls short or doesn't quite have enough from a business analysis perspective, Iryna?
CoPilot is powerful, but it still has notable limitation when it comes to analytical depth and, for example, domain context. It can draft a well-structured user story or summarize a meeting transcript, but it doesn't yet understand the regulatory intent, such as how going back to my examples at work, how an FDA design control requirement links to a system requirement, or how a usability risk might affect traceability, for example. It can generate text that looks right, but lacks of compliance sense, and we need in a regulated environment. Also, CoPilot struggles, what I noticed, with cross-document reasoning. It can summarize a single page in Confluence, for example, but if logic of data spans multiple Jira epics, design definitions, and test artifacts, it doesn't yet build a consistent end-to-end trace like a business analyst would, like a person would. And another gap is critical thinking and stakeholder context. Underline why requirements exist, not just what it says. And CoPilot can suggest acceptance criteria, but it doesn't challenge assumptions or uncover conflicting stakeholder needs, the kind of reasonings that defines true business analysis. So finally, security and data access limitation, especially in on-premise environment like Jira Server, I'm not talking about Jira Cloud, and it prevents seamless integration or data retrieval across systems. So how we can improve it? So we provide more and more context, and then neural networks learn from that, and it will improve step by step. So not now, but over time, it will get better and better. So further now, while CoPilot still speeds up my content generation, the analytical interpretation, prioritization, and validation, so it still remains very human tasks, at least for us.
Well, that's it. I mean, just your point alone, it proves that, we wouldn't bring in CoPilot to replace a business analyst, but with, as the name suggests, if it's a CoPilot to the business analyst,
to enhance,
then the BA is going to be enhanced as a result. That's right. Ankur, what would be your perspective and opinion on that same point?
Yeah, so in addition to this, I have also seen some sort of a limitation in the CoPilot, considering about my recent project in which I was working on a fintech app. So basically, an app or a software requires some sort of acceptances, and along with that, different aspects on which it is to be focused on. Likewise, in a fintech app or any other app, we have to focus on different aspects, every different functions also. So basically, talking about the complex functions, complexity of requirements. So basically, somewhere or the around the Copilot or any other tool, somewhat lacks the emotional intelligence along with that complexity, which makes it, I would say, ambiguous or not that much accurate to the requirements that we are looking forward to.
Yeah, and actually the point there about sort of like context switching, is really important, because we often don't have the luxury of just speaking to one person in a day and only focusing on one thing at a time. We tend to be speaking to multiple stakeholders. Some of us are working on different initiatives, different types of requirement, different products at once, and therefore, we need to be able to take into account, as you said, the view of that context that we needed to apply, the stakeholders that relate to that, and then refine the requirement, the content on that basis. And it may be, if through good prompting, I think we can mitigate this. But there's also a risk, I think, if we are overly reliant on CoPilot, or we're not providing the right prompts and guidance, that it will almost apply the same logic and mentality to every requirement, irrespective of actually what we intend it to be. I say requirement, it could be every bit of output, really. Yeah, and I totally agree with the other points that you made as well. I think the biggest thing is really that dependency on some high quality prompts to get the best out of it. That doesn't mean to say that some low quality prompts won't always work. Sometimes they will, and it may be that you just have to combine your prompts or your requests to Copilot to get what you need. Most of the time it probably works. But certainly, the better we can ask questions and give instruction, then a better output we get. And that's exactly the same if we weren't using Copilot. If we're approaching a stakeholder and asking them questions, the better we can be at asking a question, probably the better response we'll get from our stakeholders as a result as well. It's the same for Copilot. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would say. I'm not sure there's much else on top of what you've both probably said. Yeah, but a positive thing that we both again we've recognised that it's a helpful tool. It is truly a Copilot, but it's not going to replace anybody, or probably. And I wonder, on that probably note, Ankur, I'll ask you first. Do you think Copilot might eventually handle some business analysis tasks end to end? So if I take requirements or process or anything that you can think of, that Copilot could be left on its own in those respects. Thank you.
Yeah, talking about, as just Iryna said, that we can provide some additional neural networks or provide some complex information to it. But at the end of the day, right now, as per my opinion, we cannot leave Copilot on its own. He can be an assistant to the business analyst who is having business acumen, who is having emotional intelligence, but somewhere or the other, it is not someone who can lead the client goals, or it is not who can understand the complex requirement from the stakeholders or manage the requirements of it on its own. He can assist us in building up flowcharts, requirement gathering, or building up BRD documents like FRD or SRS. But as per my understanding, as of now, it is not something which can lead the end-to-end process. So yeah, that would be my take on this.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair based on what I've seen as well. Iryna, have you got a different opinion or further opinion on that question?
Oh, yeah. I think that Copilot will definitely handle some repetitive pattern-based or data-driven tasks. And I'm a big fan of making agents for small repetitive tasks, and it works pretty amazing. For example, it could eventually auto-generate first draft of user stories, acceptance criteria, test cases for them directly from stakeholder inputs or system logs. And it might even create traceability links across Jira and Confluence, or integrate it with some plugins, for example, which we use in our organization, like Easy Requirements, or former name it's R4J, requirements for Jira. But again, it's not replacing analyst interpretive and ethical roles. And business analyst is not just a documentation, it's sense-making, negotiation, and decision facilitating. And Copilot can automate what we write, but not fully grasp why something matters or how it aligns with regulatory, in our case, or business and users' goals. So we see it like as a collaborative environment as co-analysts, not definitely replacing us as business analysts. Yeah, and it great perform some groundwork, capturing notes, synthesizing data, identifying gaps. So this is awesome. And BA at this time can focus on validation, stakeholder alignment, and compliance justifications. Yeah, this is how we collaborate and making more and more agents for some very small and repetitive tasks. So it helps a lot.
And I do like that point about a small repetitive task, because I think if we took an end-to-end activity, such as requirements or modeling process or looking at solution design, they're not just one activity. They're made up of loads of little tasks that we have to do. And some of those tasks we might find quite repetitive, quite time-consuming, not really value add, really. So these are things that potentially we could look at Copilot being used for. note taking is a good example of that. I think you've obviously both mentioned that. I think another example that springs to mind is that, quite often we might be asked for status updates as well, and we've probably got notes or content, and trying to lift that and turn it into a status update without it taking too much time is for me a valuable activity that we can hand over to CoPilot to help us with anyway. So at least draft this status update. We might refine it, and it might need to refine it again. Formatting it, of course, is probably similar. But I really like the point Iryna made as well around test cases, because I think, it's probably quite easy to use it for requirements, to naturally think about it evolving your acceptance criteria. But it's probably a very natural next step to think about, how is this going to feed into a test scenario? And it's not necessarily to say that we as the BA need to do all of these activities, but we can perhaps use the tool to validate it, to make sure it is testable and it has enough for a tester to be able to pick it up. But then, of course, when a tester receives our requirement, they can use CoPilot themselves to generate or suggest test cases as well. I also like the point you both made about sort of traceability. And I think a really key part of traceability, and right at the heart of what we're trying to do often, is really making sure that what we're defining is within the scope of the project or the initiative or the product we're working on. So probably quite effective, I think, at using CoPilot, as it is ChatGPT or other tools as well, to give it the view of your scope, give it the view of the requirement that you're shaping with its help, with CoPilot's help, and almost use it as a way to validate that what you're putting forward seems to be in line with the scope. And ultimately, the decision isn't the tools, it isn't yours, but having that suggestion at least allows you to go and ask further questions if needed. So I really like the points you made there about repetitive tasks, test cases can be used for traceability, and all the other things you also mentioned as well between the two of you. I wonder, Iryna, you've mentioned a number of things that you use the tool for, and it could be good for. Do you have a number one activity that you would like to hand over to CoPilot, or you have handed over to CoPilot?
So that's probably my favorite, what I do with that. It's summarizing and structuring stakeholder conversation in any format into actionable requirements. So we have CoPilot integrated in the Outlook and in Microsoft Teams, and it takes notes, summarizes discussion, and it even transforms all of that into a requirement in a format I need to. So, and I define it in my small actions, what exactly format I expect to get as a result. And after every workshop or a design review, I often, before I spend hours on my working on my meeting notes, chat messages, and whiteboard screenshots, trying to manually compose into well-formatted Jira stories or some Confluence documentation. And now CoPilot does it within minutes and summarize discussion quite well. And it can automatically extract functional statements like user goals, potential acceptance criteria, and even suggest where they fit in my requirements hierarchy. I have this tree view in the R4J in Jira. So it's a real game changer, in my opinion. And again, for repetitive, text-heavy, and rule-based, which is fully guided by a real person. And it's perfect in drafting requirement, like being my co-author. And while I can focus on other things. And in short, we let CoPilot handle busy work on transforming content into structure, something very unstructural into structural. And we focus on thinking, questioning, and decision making. You are right, we need to ask the right questions. The right prompts give you better output. And we are focusing on iterations. So we work on improvement on our prompts. So we do it better, and better every time. And as soon as we identify some gaps, we improve it. So I will give you another example. I made very good agents to practice to get my pilot license. So I gave as an input this book. It's similar to a book, and it's a huge standards pilot need to know to pass this exam. And it in a play mode practice with me every evening, like what I had to know. And finally, brain works really well in this matter. It's like in a collaborative and game mode. I improved it a couple of times, and it resulted in my successful exam.
And that's it. It's really, it's an interesting perspective actually, because you can use it in different ways to suit your personal style and your personal preference, and to help not just. I think what's important what you said there about, it's not just about giving you information; it's helping you understand information in a different, more effective way. Because it's no good, I think, having a tool like Copilot that takes an input, creates a nice output, and we have no awareness really of what is written in there. We need to have the awareness of the topic. We need to be the experts. Copilot is, as it says, it's assisting us. It's not we're assisting it. So I like the points you made, Iryna. Ankur, what's your number one BA task that you would hand over today, or do hand over?
Yeah, so basically my number one task is to analyze the data. So basically as a data analyst, which I was working as at an investment bank before. So my foremost task was to understand the data. And Copilot is something which helps me to understand the data, the raw data, and focusing on cleaning up it. So basically it acts as a guide for me to how to work on the messed up data and then provide me the actionable insights with that. Along with that, something Copilot helps me in building up AI agents. So basically, I have created my own AI agent wherein Copilot is a powerful brain to it, in which it provides me the insights about what the current trends are. It has been connected with the LinkedIn and Twitter, which is X right now. So basically, it is something which helps me to find out the recent topics on which we can work, in which we can target the clients or the freelancers or the people worldwide who are focusing on different current topics. So basically, it helps me to build up AI agents, analyze data, and analyze the requirements of the clients as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned data there, because it's easy for us to sometimes think about our analysis outputs in terms of requirements, PowerPoints as an example, when actually before we've probably got to the point that we want to document a recommendation sometimes, or document a requirement, we've probably done some analysis, we've perhaps looked at some data, identified some themes and patterns, and traditionally we would have used Excel, of course. We probably would have used other tools, but Excel is a good example. And we might have just relied on our own capability in terms of pivot tables or formulas. And actually now we can ask the question, in terms of, are there any key themes or trends? And even if that's just to give us a view of a different dimension to apply when we look at the data, that's really useful. Or are there any outlying bits of data? Is there an underlying theme, that we haven't noticed, as well? So there's that broader context that we can get into with tools like Copilot. And then if we need to, of course, we build out dashboards in the tool with a bit of help. We can build formulas if we need to make it more repeatable with a bit of help. So I think it's quite useful points you make there. I think my number one tip would just be just to make sure I'm asking myself to use Copilot more often. So with every day, I'm using tools like ChatGPT, like Copilot. I'm starting to use other tools as well. They're not the only two on the market, of course. And I think it's just understanding through using what the capabilities are and how you can evolve. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And actually, one other thing I'll mention as well, and that's just not being afraid to ask the tool itself, because they're capable of interacting in English. Now, asking the tool, is there a better way to ask this question? And it will often give you a suggestion which might help you ask or prompt better in the future. So that's probably my number one tip. And then, so I guess the last question this time, Ankur, I'll ask you this question first, and that's really: is there a single BA skill that we think can Copilot could replace if it's even possible? So by a skill, I might mean, I don't necessarily mean listening, but that's that we've got many competencies and skills of BAs. But is there one particular one that you think there is a chance that Copilot could replace?
Yeah, so talking about my opinion right now. So basically, Copilot is growing at a very fast rate. So basically, adding up new algorithms and new networks and new data and new information. It is building up at a very fast rate. So basically, at my take right now, so analyzing data would be the most important thing that AI can replace because it can provide insights in a minute or a in a minute or 30 seconds. But talking about a human, it would be a it would be a tedious task for a human to analyze the same data, and it would take more time to analyze or provide insights from this. So yeah, that would be something that AI can replace as of now.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout. Yeah. Iryna?
Yeah, in my opinion, Copilot still can't replace critical thinking. The ability to interpret context, balance competing interests, and make some informed trade-off. And yeah, as business analysis in our case, in healthcare, it's not just producing documentation. It's about asking the right question, challenging some assumptions, and understanding why behind every requirement. So Copilot can generate stories for us or acceptance criteria that looked perfect on paper, but it in some cases don't have make any sense when stakeholders needs conflicts with a regulatory constraint, or when a simple change, for example, a request introduces hidden design control implication under FDA or MDR. So these are our main regulators. And what is equally important also, AI can't replace empathy and facilitation. So the human connection that builds trust with stakeholders and helps resolve tension in workshops and align people around shared understanding. So while Copilot can accelerate how we work, it can't replace why we analyze. So that's my opinion. And uniquely human skills, reasoning, negotiation, and ethical judgment. And this is still a heart of our role as business analysts.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think, my answer would be that I don't think there is one general BA skill it can replace, but I think it can help with every one of the skills. So like
Absolutely.
on a competence. So like listening is a key competence that we definitely can't replace at 100%. I believe in that, of course, but it's hard sometimes to be in long sessions or multiple sessions with different stakeholders, and when you're trying your best to listen to every piece of information, it's really difficult to truly have every bit of information understood. So, and to capture it and to ask the right questions as well. So, having Copilot by your side to capture your notes, give you that view so you can come back to it after. Even what I do quite often actually is I might use it for taking notes, but I'll also have my notes as well, and just do a comparison and get it, ask it to help with that comparison, so that I can be really confident that I've got the main points that I need from every session. I've understood it as well. The interesting thing as well that I would add is that that I think often is a skill that we develop is sort of our domain or product or topic knowledge. We learn and we understand information. So Iryna, you'll learn a lot about the dental practice and some of the terminologies. And as I said, if I was first coming along into that domain and area myself, profession, I think what I feel like Copilot could possibly replace at a very small level is the need for me to ask those basic questions before I start, as what is dentistry? What does a dental nurse do? What does a dentist do? What type of what type of needs might they have of a system, as an example, and that might then give me a fairly basic answer, but as an example, just informing me that a dentist has patients, and the patients will have records, and we need to know when each patient has had a checkup, and they might need their next checkup. That starts to become information I think, okay, yeah, that's interesting. I can make sure I can ask some sensible questions, as I probably covered earlier. But there we go. But I think the overarching message from all three of us really is that CoPilot is truly that. It's a co-pilot. It's not ready yet to be promoted to the actual pilot, but it can be there and help us. And the more we use it, I'm sure the more benefit we'll get. But probably importantly, the benefit we'll get is that the real value that we bring as business analysts, we can do more of it rather than use some of our time on the less valuable things. That seems to be the message that's come across from both of you. So I think, I think that's probably a good place to take a pause, and thank you both for your insight on CoPilot today. I'm sure if we have this session again in 2 years' time, we'll have completely different answers. But in the meantime, thank you very much. I look forward to speaking to you again and hearing your views. And if anyone who's watching this have other views, you've been using CoPilot yourself, you want to share some insight, please do use the comments. So I'll have a look at it. Perhaps Iryna and Ankur will, but I'm sure those others that are watching this might also benefit from your insight. So have a feel and put in comments on yourself. And of course, if you haven't subscribed or dropped a like, please do that, because that really helps as well. It might even help CoPilot recommend the BAInsights to somebody in the future. You never know. But anyway, thank you, Iryna. Thank you, Ankur. I look forward to seeing you next time. Okay. Thank you.